Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Q&A Cafe here at the Georgetown Club, where we're very happy to be marking, I don't know what it is. We started in 2001, October 2001, and so this is an anniversary. And interestingly,
the momentous 21-year anniversary.
500, more than 500 interviews, and I hope some of you have been to all of them. I know you've almost been to all of them. I was thinking about this yesterday, that when we started, it was in response to the 9/11 attacks. It was an opportunity to bring people together at Nathan's, and we talked to people about that and what we were all going through, a crisis, a true crisis.
Yeah.
And so here we are again, coming out of a crisis that still has a hold on us, and politically, socially, culturally, and another crisis. So, hi, Mark Leibovich.
Hi, Carol.
So
Good
much
to be
fun.
here. Good to be here.
So
Nice to mark a crisis with you again, as usual.
Well, and you mark
Let's
crises so well because, you know, Mark, and you should all get this book if you don't already have it. Thank you for your servitude. Does this follow your NFL book? Or was
It
there
does. That was the last one. That was the last book. That was
That's
in
a pivot.
2018. It's a bit of a pivot. Well, you know.
From sport to sport.
Sport to sport, swamp to swamp. This was, after the 2016 election, I was a little burned out on politics, and I decided, I'd take a couple of years to write about football and immerse myself in that world, and it was a nice break. And then eventually my editors pulled me back and said, when your grandkids ask you about the Trump years, do you want to be telling them you're writing about football or like history? And I was like, football, actually. But he wasn't buying that. So I came back and so this is my take on the Trump years. It is not a Trump book. I don't want to try to explain Trump, and I don't feel capable
of doing. It's about Washington. It really is about Washington.
This is what I do. I write about Washington.
It's about Washington circa right now. And if anything, it is a deep dive into what allegiances and alliances mean or don't mean. It's really about loyalty.
Yes,
yeah, no,
exactly.
it's and we're going to talk about that a lot. But I did want to start. I wanted to go back a little bit to what I just mentioned, the pandemic, because I'm of the mind that we shouldn't pretend it didn't happen. And I wanted to ask you how you're doing, how it affected you, and is there any notable ways you think it changed you or your life?
The pandemic.
Yeah.
Great question. I really, it's interesting because you sort of want to think you're on the other side of this and things seem to be returning to normal, and here we are all indoors and mostly unmasked, almost entirely unmasked.
I wore a mask in.
Good. But we're not. I mean, this is sort of going to be with us for a while. It did change me a lot. I was always sort of, I liked my newsroom, and I liked being out. I wasn't much of a homebody. I kind of became a homebody. I did not love the work from home thing at first. Kind of came to like it a little bit. It became comfortable. And comfort is something that I think you should fight against, especially if you're under 80 or so. I keep moving that date up, for as long closer I get to it. Right. But so, I got restless. I wrote a book. I wrote a lot of this book because I was home and, I had a day job but still, it was easy to sort of like hide from bosses and stuff. Don't tell anyone. And I switched jobs. I was going to
ask if that was part and parcel of...
It sort of was. It actually, I was at the New York Times for 16 years. I was at the Washington Post for 9 years before that. So I've always been a newsroom guy. I've always been attached to newspapers. And then the Atlantic came calling, and I've been a big fan of the Atlantic for a long time. A lot of my writing idols have worked there and still do work there. And they've been doing some great stuff, and I decided why not. I missed magazine writing, and being home every day gave me a window into the fact that maybe I don't need the newsroom energy as much as I thought, that you could function, in a more kind of outdoor cat environment, sort of like make your own schedule, and try something new, because I think change is good. And so that, I think, was probably a large, reaction to some degree to the pandemic and the kind of reevaluations that a lot of us did during that period. And yeah, I would not want to go through it again, but I think it was time for reflection, and that was useful in some ways.
How old are your children? Were they school age during it?
Oh yeah, they were. It was bad for them. It was. So I have a 21-year-old, and now at 21-year-old, 18-year-old, and 15-year-old. So
key ages.
Key ages. Two of them were in high school. One of them had just started college. The pandemic was terrible for the college student. There was just campus closed, remote work. I mean, you just lose out on the fun of college and high school. I mean,
all those excuses to be crazy.
All those. Well, yeah, and the pandemic drove a lot of them crazy.
Well, different.
But it was bad, and I'm grateful that. I would like to think that if this happens again, God forbid it doesn't, but we do things differently. I mean, I do think that, remote school was maybe more harmful than we realized at the time. I know it was terrible for my girls, and maybe more terrible than what the actual risk was. But so yeah, it was bad for them, and thankfully they're on the other side of it and have emerged. So.
Well, thank you for talking about that, and congratulations on the new job. And to snap us now into the present, as we tape this, it's 2 weeks until the midterm elections. Do the midterm elections, do the election cycles get to you, speaking of sport, and I will keep coming back to this, do they affect you the way a Super Bowl affects sports nuts? I mean, is this...
No.
Or is this just something else?
Yeah, I mean, the Super Bowl, you can ignore the hype. I mean, you can ignore a lot of the punditry, a lot of the predictions before a midterm. Look, the stakes are really high. And I mean, a couple of rules I have when I look to a midterm. First of all, I try to ignore as much of the noise as possible. I honestly don't think people really have a sense of what's going to happen. I think people are always wrong. The press is always wrong. Today's poll. Polling hasn't proven reliable at all over the last several cycles. And also, I don't think pollsters have, and even the media has a really good grip on the post-Dobbs decision America. I think, the abortion issue was sort of been a big surprise in Kansas and Alaska and New York State, a couple of the special elections or referendum elections or primaries that came after that decision. And I don't think pollsters have a read on that either. But, some of the
economy's eclipsed abortion, I believe.
It sounds like it. I mean,
almost everything we're seeing at CBS, it's...
Yeah, that's certainly what it's... I don't doubt that. I mean, I think the economy is the big issue. I think inflation's, basically part of the economy, but it's the same.
No, but it's hitting everybody every day.
Hitting everyone. Biden's, not very popular. Trump is not very popular either, and
then meanwhile we have the sideshow that's Kanye West.
Oh boy.
And which made me want to ask, doesn't every election cycle have to have a sideshow?
Oh, this has plenty. Yeah, I don't think it has to, but I think it does.
It does,
I mean,
generally.
I think, what's interesting about, the Kanye West story, I try to ignore or tune out as best I can. I mean, it's obviously troubling, but what I do think what is important about it, and I think is kind of on point and relevant to what's happened in the Republican Party, and one of the themes of this book is that, he has said these horrific anti-Semitic things, and no one has really condemned him outside of the kind of usual suspects. There has been...
Well, Adidas got forced into dropping him.
I mean, did they actually drop him? Did that happen today? Okay, because that was it took a while.
It was a slow walk.
Okay, did that happen today? It was like, I haven't... They were shamed
in the last
into
news
it.
cycle.
Right. I mean, but this is kind of a classic. I mean, Kanye West is, Republicans, I wouldn't say have adopted him, but, he was on Tucker Carlson, and, he was in the Oval Office with Trump.
Yeah,
and,
Trump gave him a boost.
Trump gave him a boost, and none of them are really condemning these words. I mean, free speech and so forth. I mean, to me, that's exactly the kind of enabling that they afforded Trump and have afforded the people that they are afraid of. And the leaders in the Republican Party today are just deathly afraid of getting on the wrong side of people.
And it
like
shows
Trump.
over and over again.
Yeah.
Another marker, cultural, journalistic, whatever you want to call it, that I've noticed in the last 48 hours is Bob Woodward's tapes.
Yeah.
But more than that, Bob Woodward, it's like if there were a fourth wall in our business, he's broken the fourth wall.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating to me because yes, the tapes are fascinating, but Bob's need to emote about it is so interesting.
Yeah.
He said something sitting right there just in this last year, and he used it again in his editorial. That I guess he's just been carrying it around, but his concern about Trump now knowing where the levers are.
Yeah.
And that's, to him, to Bob's point of view, the most dangerous thing. But as an observer of media, what do you think of this moment with Woodward kind of breaking through the fourth wall?
You know, Woodward, clearly, I mean, based on the things he said even before he released this, he is deeply troubled by Trump. I mean, you know, he's an investigative reporter, but he's also an institutionalist. He knows how institutions work. You know how presidencies should go, even at their worst. And, you know, he's seen presidencies end in disgrace. He has caused a presidency to end in disgrace. And he usually plays it pretty straight. That's kind of his thing. And, yeah, I think it's notable. I don't think it's necessarily surprising given what he said in the last few years. And I think that Bob, like a lot of us, feels compelled to maybe step out of type a little bit because, you know, we sign up for, in the media, we sign up for some basic principles. I mean, fairness, you know, certainly unbiased against parties and, you know, taking, you know, we're biased on the side of seriousness on both sides, ideally.
And facts.
And facts. And, but, you know, I don't think any of us signed up for both sidesing on democracy or racism or the kind of, you know, anti-norm conduct that we've seen. I think Bob, as someone, again, who has grown up in this world and who has, you know, despite his work, I mean, you know, despite the trouble he has caused, has reverence for this world. It does not surprise me at all that he would be appalled by it. And look, I welcome him doing this. I mean, the stuff is there. It might as well be public and people might as well have access to it.
What impact do you think it has, though, if any? I mean, first of all, you've talked to Trump a number of times. He probably just sees it as a positive, right? That Bob Woodward's talking about him again?
Probably, yeah. I mean, Trump notably didn't talk to Woodward for his book.
Right.
And he talked to everyone else. For Woodward's last book on...
But he did, all the recordings were for Rage, I believe.
The previous one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure Trump, first of all, I don't think there'll be any ramifications for it. I don't think the people that Trump can ill afford to lose, which is, you know, his base, are listening to these tapes or care at all about these tapes. I mean, one thing that is really scary about all this is that Trump has created this consequence-free environment for himself where, I mean, the old joke that he made in 2015 about how, you know, I could shoot someone
on Fifth
in the middle
Avenue.
of Fifth Avenue and not lose any support. I mean, that seemed absurd and like a joke at the time, but I mean, think about it. He's gotten away, not with murder per se, but he's gotten away with unthinkable things.
You know how much we love to use the term coattails also in what we do. I think it's interesting that tone of Trump's doesn't necessarily he doesn't have coattails. Like Kanye can't necessarily get away with what Trump can get away with. He can do it, he can try, but he gets dropped by Adidas. I mean, that I don't, it changed the culture, but I don't know that if Trump didn't run, if it would last.
I think Trump certainly created a permission structure early on. I mean, I agree. I mean, I think a lot of Trump's acolytes or people who are sort of linked to him have believed wrongly that his kind of, again, consequence-free environment extends to them.
We used to call it Teflon, remember?
Teflon, whatever, whatever you want to call it, that it extends to them. I don't think it's always true, but I also think that, look, I mean, Kanye West was dropped. I mean, if Trump were accountable to a corporate board, to shareholders, to a boss of some kind, he would have been fired early on, just like he was let go by NBC. I mean, there was a lot of companies that let him go early on.
Just wouldn't do business with him, just like the town is full of lawyers who won't represent him.
Right, and you know, what's bizarre is the most responsible, important, powerful job in the world doesn't have the kind of oversight that corporations do, that I do, that
His
any
board is
employees
his
do.
children.
Well, no, his board is his electorate, and
Well,
and
publicly.
his children. Yeah, I mean, it's not like he had a, and I doubt if he's president again, he'll have any harder pushback. But no, I mean, elections are only 4 years. He's not going to be impeached. I mean, he was impeached, but he's not going to be convicted because the Republican Party is almost entirely in his pocket. And so that's the other thing. I mean, the party is your board. I mean, Nixon didn't leave office because he was impeached. He didn't resign because he was convicted by the Senate. He left because he lost the board. The board being Barry Goldwater, the leaders, the Republican leaders of the House and Senate, the party, right?
Yeah.
And that just simply wouldn't happen today with Kevin McCarthy or Mitch McConnell or Lindsey Graham or any of those folks.
Well, that kind of brings us to the book because the book, and it's such a, I mean, you groan a lot, but you laugh a lot, and you need the laughs
Laughter
after
is
the groans.
good. Yeah,
yes.
you can get away with a lot if you make people
There's
laugh.
wit on every page, but in many ways, the book is about the board.
Oh,
Who are the
absolutely.
people who thought they were the board,
Yeah.
and who thought, oh, he loves me, and he's always going to love me.
Yeah.
Which doesn't happen in any single instance except maybe his children, and that could be
That's
debated.
fraud. I think it is. No, there's no board. And again, I mean,
They come in
thinking.
I mean, we can go back to the very beginning, when Bryce Priebus comes in to be
Right.
chief of staff, and
Yeah, I don't think they really think they're the board because that would suggest that they do have oversight. I mean, a lot of them like to think that they're the adults in the room, and think of like Paul Ryan used to say or did say after he left. I talked to him quite a bit for this book. He said, "Oh, but it could have been so much worse if not for what I saved him from, or saved us from. I saved us from this tragedy and that tragedy." This is a direct quote. This
left
tragedy.
town.
And that, well, he did came back. He said he was going to go back to Wisconsin and be close to it. He lasted 6 months, and he's now on the Fox News board and living in Potomac. But he said, I stopped him from this tragedy and that, and I said, Speaker, what tragedy? What are we talking about here? Because that word kind of jumped out at me, and he said, I've already said too much. But so there was no board. The guy, I mean, it's amazing. I mean, shamelessness is a superpower, and he realized that you can get away with a hell of a lot here because these are just norms and kind of conventional things, but they're not like laws.
I suppose one of the most notorious moments in the idea of a board was the famous cabinet meeting where they all spoke their fidelity to him on camera.
That was amazing, right?
And you kind of trace all of them and the ones who, Pence. I mean, Pence could be a very serious contender for the 2024 election. And you wonder, Pompeo also, you wonder how much of this comes back to haunt them. Does it?
You mean like the sycophancy?
Yeah, well, the servitude.
Yeah, servitude. I don't think any of it will come back to haunt them because I don't think any of them have a shot to win. I think especially if Trump runs, I don't see any of them doing anything against Trump. I think if Trump wants to run, he'll almost certainly win. I think he would probably beat DeSantis. I mean, people say, Ron DeSantis is the alternative. He's the heir apparent.
Yeah, okay, so speak about Ron DeSantis. Speak the things about Ron DeSantis that are being said all over town right now.
Yeah.
But not on camera.
Yeah. Well, here's what I'll say it on camera. I'll say it here. I'll say it anywhere. I mean,
know.
Ron DeSantis is. That's why you have me. Ron DeSantis is. Well, first of all, he's a kind of a fashionable. He's like a wish fulfillment candidate. People in the media and people in the Republican Party want to think that there is a somewhat normal, somewhat on the rails version of Trump that they can sort of, state their fealty to the party through with. But the guy's not. He doesn't wear well. Republicans who served in the House with him, Republican governors who have been in the RGA with him, Republican Governors Association, don't speak well of his personality. Trump tends to make total mincemeat of people like him who are not all that comfortable in their own skin. And he's very untested in a national setting.
He does no interviews.
He doesn't do interviews. There was a debate last night against Charlie Crist, the Democrat in Florida, and Crist just sort of asked him, Governor, are you going to serve 4 years? Can you promise everyone you'll serve 4 years? in Tallahassee if you're reelected, and he couldn't. I mean, like, you'd think that he would have prepared for like that question. I mean, obviously, you know, he probably wants to run for president, and he didn't want to foreclose that. And there are a million ways to answer that, you know, disingenuously, but answer it nonetheless. And he just froze. He just froze, which to me was like a real, not only unforced error, but also just a real rookie mistake. I mean, be prepared.
Well, even when he was handed, and it was a catastrophe, and it was, you know, it was awful, horrific, the hurricane.
Yeah.
But for a sitting governor, that is an opportunity to, you know, take the stage and display your gifts. And he got co-opted by a terrible photo op in these white white boots.
Yeah.
You know.
Absolutely.
And you think somebody didn't say to him, "No, don't wear that outfit."
Weird, man. He doesn't listen to people too. That's the other thing.
He's probably getting told, but he doesn't listen. Though we hear, I'm sure you do too, that his wife has a very significant role in the decisions that are made by him. But
well, she should dress him better then.
yeah, well, that was a fail. But but you know, if he does have presidential ambitions, at a certain point you have to come out from behind the curtain, and you have to sit down and you have to do interviews and you have to talk to people. And I've privately heard from people in the party, in the Republican Party, that he's not very good with donors. He comes into the room and stands for a little while and then leaves.
No,
so
absolutely.
It's going to be fascinating.
I don't
to watch.
think he would wear well. I honestly don't.
But it is. Do you think Trump cares at all about him?
Oh yeah, he cares deeply about him. He cares. You know, he wants the attention. He wants to be the heir apparent.
Who does he care about? Who gets under his skin more, DeSantis or Liz Cheney?
Different. I mean, I think DeSantis is just sort of jealousy and wariness and, you know, contempt. No doubt about that. I mean, Liz Cheney, he probably feels vindicated just because she lost, you know, and I mean, look, he has plenty of contempt and resentment to go around. I mean, he's perfectly capable of hating Liz Cheney and resenting Ron DeSantis, you know, before breakfast. So,
doesn't she have a little more power in a way, as she will obviously be, you know, free and independent, if she decided to run a campaign to disrupt the Republican vote?
Yeah, I don't think she would win. I don't think she is a threat to win the nomination. I think she would be a real threat.
But in terms of just pulling votes?
I think Republicans who would be open to Liz Cheney's message are probably at this point either independents or former Republicans of some kind. I honestly, I mean, first of all, she didn't get a lot of votes in Wyoming. I mean, Wyoming's a very Trumpy state, but look, she's a conservative Republican. She is, I mean, there is one proposition in the Republican Party today, and that's loyalty to Trump. There's, you know, the purity of that loyalty is greater as people fall away. I mean, I think the party's smaller. The party is smaller than it was 5 years ago by registration, by number of Republicans. I mean, like I said, a lot of them are former Republicans now. And they'd probably be open to voting for Liz Cheney, but the ones who are Democrats will probably vote for the Democrats.
So do you think there's a possibility, though, that Republicans in search of a serious candidate and don't want it to be Trump are open to the possibility of an outlier coming in?
You know, it depends who the outlier is. I don't think a never Trump outlier like a Liz Cheney or a Larry Hogan or you know, Chris Christie or someone like that. I just don't think the numbers are there. Like, especially in Iowa. I mean, maybe
that's so interesting.
Maybe New Hampshire, because there's crossover voting and independents can vote in primaries and Democrats can vote in primaries, and you know, Liz Cheney and Romney and a lot of them are quite popular among Democrats these days. And you know, Larry Hogan and Charlie Baker and the guy in Vermont, Phil
Scott.
I mean, they're all Republican governors who are deeply popular in deeply blue states. And Sununu, Chris Sununu in New Hampshire, and that's all. I think it's interesting, but I don't think, you know, Massachusetts and Maryland and Vermont and New Hampshire are emblematic of where most of the Republican Party is, or you know, where most of the country is at this point.
We're going to get to Biden, but before we do, I wanted to ask again about the book. If you had to pick one or two characters out of this narrative who you think personify the story, Who would they be?
Probably Lindsey Graham and Kevin McCarthy. Lindsey Graham personifies, well, both of them know better. They are absolutely committed to placating Donald Trump and pleasing him and wanting not to get on the wrong side of him. McCarthy desperately wants a job. I mean, he has, sucked up to Trump relentlessly. He has kowtowed to Marjorie Taylor Greene and Paul Gosar and any number of people in his caucus who he has said repeatedly are nuts, said privately. I mean, he said that, though. I mean, he clearly feels that, and he just sort of swallows it because if in 2 weeks Republicans win a House majority, he in all likelihood will be the Speaker of the House, and probably will be a fairly miserable run for him, but he'll get to be Speaker of the House, and it might end badly.
He'll have his epitaph.
He'll have that. He might even get like the Bakersfield Airport named after him. I mean, Bakersfield has never had a Speaker of the House before, to my knowledge. If there's anyone from Bakersfield here who
we
can
apologize.
well, no, you can correct me.
Okay.
But no, Bill Thomas, the longtime sort of chair of the Republican House Ways and Means Committee, who was McCarthy's mentor, and McCarthy worked for him. A very powerful guy. He got a terminal on the Bakersfield Airport named for him. But McCarthy, and he then turned on McCarthy after January 6th, so McCarthy could actually get the whole airport.
Do you think that if McCarthy were to have not kissed the ring, so to speak, that he wouldn't get the speakership? Could he have got it without Trump if he's able to get it?
I doubt it. I sincerely doubt it. And that sort of goes to, I mean, Lindsey Graham's the other example who is, I mean, he's emblematic because he hated Trump. He hated him in 2016. He's on record repeatedly as, speaking in the most disparaging of ways towards him. He was friends with John McCain, who, Trump just went after when he was on his deathbed and beyond, and into the grave. And but Graham needs desperately to be elected governor or be elected senator from South Carolina. If he doesn't have that, he's got nothing.
There's a word you use almost in caps: relevance.
Yeah,
the degree to which these people want relevance.
Yeah, I mean, Lindsey Graham, that's his word. I mean, he's always saying, and he says that, if you're not a senator, you're not relevant. And, Lindsey Graham...
Well, look at Paul Ryan. I mean, isn't that an example of being able to leave? And
you would think. I mean, the people I know, the
relevance.
formers, as we call them, that I had talked to, and I talked to a lot of them, they don't seem unhappy to be done with this. To have, former speaker in your title is not a terrible gig. But, I mean, look... relevance is, in Lindsey Graham's case, it means getting reelected. He doesn't have much else in his life besides the Senate. He doesn't have any hobbies, doesn't have a family to go home to. And he loves being in the golf shots with President Trump. He thinks it's cool that the president calls him. This is something that he derives immense emotional sustenance from, and I don't understand it, but that's him. And, it's a familiar type. We know a lot of people like that.
And Pompeo, to some degree, also plays a key role in this narrative, in that he, too, had a private opinion and then a public face that were complete opposites.
Yeah, and look, people know this. People who talk to him, people who are around him know this. But again, the people we're talking about, this is like a disconnect from the people who would vote for him. And again, I'm not convinced anyone's going to vote for him. Maybe if he goes and runs for his old House seat in Kansas, they'll vote for him. Trump hasn't really turned on him yet, but he thinks he's an idiot. There's no, Pompeo thinks Trump's an idiot, and Trump actually
probably thinks
is wary of him. But also, Pompeo's got a Harvard degree, he's got a West Point degree. Trump likes that stuff. He might be a populist, for the base, but he loves the Ivy League things and the titles and things like that.
And as he invokes about himself as well. It was interesting, the Washington Post recently published who they consider the top 10 GOP contenders for 2024 and the top 10 Democrats. And what's interesting about the Republican list, I'll just do it quickly. DeSantis, Trump, Pence, Tim Scott, Youngkin, Cruz, Nikki Haley, Rick Scott, Mike Pompeo, and Donald Trump Jr., which just kind of makes me, exactly. But interestingly, no Ted Cruz and no Marco Rubio.
Oh, is Cruz on there? I thought
No,
you said-
Cruz is not on there. Oh, Ted Cruz is on there. I take that back. No, Marco
President
Rubio.
Cruz will be demanding an apology.
Oh, God.
No, I don't think Cruz. I mean, look, I don't think. I think most of them won't run if Trump runs. The two that might are DeSantis and you mentioned Glenn Youngkin, governor of Virginia, who has a bit of a following, as a reasonable Republican or a reasonable Republican who is down with Trump or who Trump is okay with, who he got elected in what's been a pretty blue trending
He keeps
state.
a safe distance.
He does, but I mean, look at what he campaigned on. I mean, it was pretty Trumpy. I mean, critical race theory. I mean, it was kind of DeSantis with more of a smile and less of a scowl.
But you don't see him posing with Trump. And
I mean, no, you don't. And that was smart politics because Trump, was not popular in Virginia, and he won. And so I don't know, but I don't know if Youngkin has the stomach to take on Trump. I mean, that's a big effort, and obviously the path is littered with alternatives to Trump. So.
Well, and the fundraising too is, it's daunting when And as one of my colleagues said, that we all have to remember that the presidential election begins the day after the midterm elections. So,
oh, goody.
I mean, the fundraising's already begun.
Yeah.
Now, the Democratic presidential contenders are Biden, Buttigieg, Kamala Harris, Gretchen Whitmer, Gavin Newsom, Amy Klobuchar, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Roy Cooper, and AOC. But Biden, every indication is he's going to run.
Sure.
And if he doesn't run, how does he not run?
I mean, you could ask, how does he run? He's old.
Well, you can take it any. It's all yours.
Yeah, no, I personally think he's too old. But I mean, I think that's not for me to say. I mean, he can run. I mean, no one's.
Yeah.
I mean, I do think. I mean, the list you just read is. I honestly don't know who would run against Biden. I mean, I think what's interesting, maybe Bernie.
He'd have to declare himself out, I think, for most of them.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, but I think, even that, I mean, that's a pretty weak bench given that, they all lost to Biden 2 years ago. But I think not on that list, and this would be my hope if I were a Democrat or if I were advising Democrats, I think if in 2 weeks a couple of them break through, like Tim Ryan in Ohio, which is a bit of a long shot, but possible.
But as we said, all of these could go either way.
He's running a really strong race, I think, against J.D. Vance in Ohio. Mm-hmm. John Fetterman in Pennsylvania, he had a stroke. He's not coming back.
He has an interesting message,
He's got a real interesting message in Pennsylvania. Val Demings in Florida running against Marco Rubio
that
again.
Seems tough.
Well, tough, but
she's serious.
She's serious. She's run a good race.
Yeah.
Rubio seems to be making a lot of kind of unforced errors, and Florida. People assume that Florida and Ohio are just trending bright red because Trump won both of them pretty well, but Florida had a Democratic senator like until 2018 or 2019, Bill Nelson. Ohio has a very liberal senator in Sherrod Brown.
Mm-hmm.
Mike DeWine, the governor there, is pretty. I mean, he's not popular among the Trumpists. I mean, he's more in the Charlie Baker, Larry Hogan category of governor. And look, I think Ryan's run a great race. So if one of them could break through, I think they instantly become national figures of the kind of Democrat. Under 70 years old that can, I think, right? Yeah, they're all well under 70.
It can happen because the UK now has a 42-year-old prime minister, so they're.
It took them a while to get there.
And even Canada has a young.
We shouldn't be following the UK model, though. Especially now.
Right. But for Biden. When does he run out of runway for making a change if he's going to make a change? Or if he's going to make a change for himself or his ticket?
I think ideally for Democrats, if he doesn't run, it would happen pretty quickly after the midterms because that would give people time to, get adjusted to sort of a life with a lame duck. I mean, I don't think there's a belief in Biden world, and Biden has said this over the years, that as soon as you sort of take yourself out of the game, you are irrelevant, right? When you're not, you're either on your way up or on the way down in politics, and when you say you're not running again, you're automatically on the way down. So
your power starts fading.
Yeah, although I don't buy that in Biden's case. I mean, I think the most important thing he did, certainly among Democrats, was beating Trump. I mean, he saved the country, the Democratic Party, people who don't like Trump from 4 more years of Trump. That was like his absolute pinnacle. And, unfortunately, he had to govern after that, which can be a little more complicated. It was sort of all downhill. And, the party might just ask him to do it again at age 82.
But think about this, using the corporate example where we were talking about Trump, in the corporate world, you could not you'd be chairman emeritus at this point. And I wonder, I'm just speculating, if there isn't a model where a sitting president could make himself a lame duck, but maintain incredible power in that very role. Because
I think he would.
Because it hadn't been done before, because we've never had this situation.
I mean, look, no one would begrudge Joe Biden a retirement right now. Not because people dislike him, but because he is old. And, sorry.
Well, Trump is old, too.
Trump is old. Absolutely.
As old.
Not as old, but absolutely. And I also think...
And I can say that as an old.
No, this is not ageist. I mean, look, I would much rather have a hands-off, somewhat disengaged emeritus chairman model of president who is in his 80s than a aggressively malignant, damage creating someone, someone who's actually not on the rails. So I would rather have that personally, but I think that I think Biden would get incredible gratitude for stepping aside because, one, he would open the Democratic Party up to a fresh debate among fresh faces. There would be, it would show that, it would send a message that the Democrats are not afraid of its future, not afraid of talking, making hard decisions about who it is. And also, I think the gratitude of a country or certainly a party for having beaten Trump the first time and sort of stepped in a moment of incredible division, incredible turmoil, and just sort of doing his best. And then, I don't see him saying, "Oh, I'm not running," and people just saying, "Oh, how dare you?" I mean, I just don't.
Yeah, get off the stage. We don't want to hear from him. Yeah. Well, and it would also, it could also be significant, the way in which he did it, and the way in which the party handled it, and who the eventual nominee was, and the way that person embraced the president. Yeah. So it's a fascinating discussion. Yeah. I think also it's interesting that if Biden does run and he's reelected, I think he'll be 85 at the end of 86 at the end of his term.
Yeah, that's scary. I mean, look, I don't. I would hope. I mean, again, I would hope that if he's reelected, he would be more inclined to step aside if he didn't feel up to it. I mean, being president is hard. But
I can't imagine it. I
just
the hours, just the hours.
Yeah,
Exactly. But from this list of Democratic contenders, let's say everything goes the way it's going and he runs for re-election, is Pete Buttigieg the star to watch, though?
Yeah, I mean, he's certainly appealing. He's great on TV. The party seems to like him. I mean, his problem is, and certainly was when he ran in 2020, African-American voters, which is the solid core of the Democratic Party, did not warm to him at all. And he just didn't break through. And, that's kind of a non-starter if you want the Democratic nomination. He's got a lot of work to do.
Just think how different we'll be as a country, at the end of the next Biden term, whoever the next president is.
Who knows, right?
Well, we changed so much that I'm not even convinced that Trump would run, depending on how things keep going with him.
There is certainly, there are some people who think that.
And he anoints Junior, Well.
Okay, doesn't work like that. But I mean, like Junior, sure, anyone can run. He's of age, so.
Well, the time is flying, and I did want to get in another topic, going back to your expertise on the NFL, bringing it right here to Washington and our team and our team's owner. Yeah. What do you know about how much trouble or not Dan Snyder is in? I
mean, I don't have inside the room data like I might have a few years ago.
But you understand the culture,
I mean, here's the thing about the Washington Commanders, the Washington football team, the whatever you want to call them. I mean, they were a crown jewel of the NFL 30 years ago, 20
crown
years
jewel
ago.
of the city.
Crown jewel of the
just
city, like a
wonderful
rare
to be
point
a fan.
of agreement among Democrats and Republicans. They all went to RFK or even wherever the new stadium, when it was new. People love the Redskins. Now, people hate Dan Snyder. There's a point of bipartisan
It gets in the way
agreement.
of loving the team.
No, I mean, the bad will that he has engendered in so many different ways between the struggles of the football team, the turmoil, the culture, the sexual harassment, the horrific stadium, his own personality is, it's just worn it down. It's a destroyed entity, and it's a big problem for the league.
When ESPN reported that he was, keeping files on various other team owners and Goodell, we heard a lot about how that went down with owners, but how does that go down with owners? I mean, they are a unique group of billionaires.
On one hand, it goes down not well because it's a threat and it's blackmailish. However, on the other hand, it's if one wanted to hire private investigators and dig up dirt on NFL owners, there's a lot of stuff out there. These are not. These are people with a lot of skeletons, a lot of just bad stuff out there. These are not Is he
still making them money? Is that what it comes down to?
Not as much as he used to.
Yeah.
I mean, the Commanders are. No, they're a disaster, and most of all, they create terrible bad will and bad PR, which is a big commodity in the NFL. But no, I mean, they're not making the revenues that they used to. I mean, it's not like kids are going out and buying jerseys like.
But they all share when a team gets to build a bright new shiny stadium. They all share in the wealth of that, right? So
yes.
Snyder's being blocked from being able to do that by the city, by the region.
Sure.
Because of the toxic culture he's created.
Absolutely.
So at any point does that come to roost with the NFL, with Goodell?
Oh yeah, no. I mean, when you're an NFL owner in an owners meeting, I mean, there are.
He sends his wife now.
He sends his wife. Oh, that's because he's suspended. Yeah, no, he has to. There are three things that you boast to your friends and competitors, your business partners and competitors about. They're not friends. One is, how you did on the field. Like, did you win a Super Bowl? Did you get to the playoffs? Two is your revenues. And three is what's your stadium look like? Because that's the ultimate, bauble, right? Jerry Jones or Stan Kroenke with the Rams, they have these big, beautiful, palatial stadiums that cost billions of dollars, and they show it off like they would a car or a trophy wife or whatever. Snyder's got, the worst facility in football. I don't go there anymore. It's hard to get to. It's not fun. Not enough luxury by
It oozes him.
Yeah, he can't even go. Well, I guess he could probably go. I don't know if the condition of his suspension is. I don't know if he can attend games.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, our time is up, but tell me quickly: is another book percolating?
No.
Is that a good place to be?
It really is. Yeah. I promise.
Kind of free fall into what it might be.
Never again. That's what I keep saying. But I've said that 5 times now. It's really nice to have one job, which is my day job, as opposed to the day job and then worrying about writing 1,000 words.
That's something the pandemic taught us, isn't it?
Yeah.
Enjoying time.
It's really nice. It's really nice not having a book. So talk to me in a year when I've stupidly signed on to a book.
We want you to have another
college
book,
tuition bills, and I'm like, all right, what have you done? I look miserable again.
No, please have another book. I need it. But in the meantime, everybody, make sure you get this book. I think Mark can stick around for a second if you have a book and when it's signed.
Yeah.
But thank you all, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.